Another cable type that you'll come across in the recording world is MIDI. MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface and is a way of transmitting musical information to an audio interface and then onto your computer. Now you can see in my setup, I have a keyboard back here, which is connected via a MIDI cable to my audio interface. Now, the MIDI protocol is quite old. It was developed in the early 1980s, but is still a standard in studios today. You'll find newer keyboards will use maybe a USB type protocol to send the same sort of information to a computer, but it's not necessarily any better than the good old MIDI standard. Now, MIDI contains information about the notes that you're playing, the velocity or how hard you press the keys. It has information on your sustain pedal, when you press the sustain pedal and when you release it, on the pitch bend wheel, on the modulation wheel, and more. You can use MIDI for all kinds of information to control all kinds of different devices. You can have a MIDI keyboard control several rack units of sound samplers for a live performance type application, or you can have a very simple application like I have going on here, where I'm taking a keyboard and I'm using the MIDI output of the keyboard going to the MIDI input of my audio interface, and that's how I'm getting the musical note data and other data into my computer. Now, that data is used for controlling things like virtual instruments inside of my multi-track recording application. Now, anyone who's played a keyboard ever knows that keyboards already have these sounds, so why would you use these virtual instruments inside the computer? Well, the computer has far more memory and processing power than any keyboard will ever have. In fact, it's popular in live performances to see a controller keyboard, which is a keyboard that doesn't have any sounds on it, but it only sends MIDI data going to an audio interface that goes to a computer, or through maybe USB goes directly to a computer. And then the computer will host all of those sounds, your piano sounds, your drum sounds. And the reason is that the amount of information in one sound pack, say for instance a piano, is so much larger than you'll find on a keyboard. Now you'll hear keyboards that have some great sounds in headphones or played through a speaker system, but they pale in comparison to what's available in the plug-in world. Another thing to note when talking about cables is that the use of a quality cable is very important in any application. When you're looking at cables, be it XLR, instrument cables, RCA, doesn't matter. You'll always see a range of prices and a range of quote-unquote qualities. You'll also see some companies that are well above what's maybe the standard or average pricing, and those companies will claim a lot of far out and fabulous things about their product. They'll somehow transmit the audio better or faster. Well, I want to caution you about those particular products and cables. I want to caution you about those special cables, because a good quality cable made by a reputable manufacturer is just about the best that you can get anyway. Electricity travels at a super fast speed, some 300,000 kilometers per second. So as long as you have good quality copper and it's insulated well and it's shielded well, that's just about the best that you can get. There is a difference in the actual connectors on cables, and you'll find like some $5 XLRs will have some really cheap looking connectors, and I would stay away from those cables. But things that have a real sturdy looking connector, especially ones made by Switchcraft or Neutrik, are probably a really good cable that will last you a really long time. All right, lastly, let's talk about how to wrap a cable. Now, in my opinion, there are two ways to wrap a cable. There's the right way, and then there's the wrong way. Now, the wrong way looks like this. If you take the cable and you bring your elbow up in this kind of motion, you're wrapping the cable the wrong way. Doesn't matter what kind of cable it is. It could be an XLR cable. It could be an instrument cable. It could be a 50-foot 12-gauge power cable. It doesn't matter. That's the wrong way to do it. And here's the reason why. When you wrap the cable like this, what you're doing is you're making a lot of twists in the cable, because all these loops are going the same way. And so when you undo this, you'll find that the cable has a twist in it. See, if we put this cable together, it wants to be twisted together. And that means that there's a slight twist of the cable over the length of it. What this means is that your cable will never ever lay flat on the ground. And that's bad because cables that don't lay flat are a tripping hazard. And the long-term effect of this is even worse because if you leave your cables wrapped the wrong way, you are leaving them wrapped with all kinds of twists in them. And especially if they get warm, the rubber or PVC molding on the outside of the cable will actually kind of reset itself so that the cable will be permanently twisted or corkscrewed. This is no good for cables. So let's talk about the right way to wrap a cable. Now you may hear this technique referred to by some different names. One is twist, reverse twist. One is the studio wrap. One is over under. This is what it looks like. Hold one end of the cable in one hand, and then you're going to make a loop here. Now the first loop should look like this, where the long part of the cable is on the outside. Then the next loop, you're going to take your other hand, in my case the left hand, and you're going to make kind of a half twist on the cable so that it goes underneath the line. Now, let me show you what that looks like again. Here's the first loop, like this. And I actually twisted that over. And now here's the next one where I'm going to twist it under. So the cable actually goes underneath. The long part of the cable is underneath this loop. And we do the next one, and we make an over twist. Then we do another one, and we go under. And so you twist one way, and then you twist back the other way. And by doing this, you're essentially not twisting the cable at all because you are twisting it one way for one loop, and then you are twisting it back the next way for the subsequent loops. And what you get is a cable that essentially doesn't have any turns in it whatsoever. So if you were to take both sides of this cable and pull them straight, the cable would be absolutely dead flat. That's exactly what you want. Now, if you end up wrapping your cables a whole bunch of times the wrong way, you basically will never be able to wrap those cables up the right way ever again because they will have twists in them. And when you try and wrap them up, it doesn't matter which way after they've been ruined, they'll never wrap up nice like this with nice tight loops or loops that are all uniform like this. Storing them like that can be a real nightmare. Let me show you one more time. So we do the first loop like this, we make a twist, we do the next loop and we twist underneath. We do another loop, we do the next loop underneath. Now, you want to make all your loops roughly the same size and as big as you can without being completely impractical. Now, in this particular case, the last loop happened to be an under twist or a reverse twist. Now, it's really, really important that when you secure this cable, now in this case I'm using a Velcro strap, that you keep both ends of the cable on opposite sides of the coil. And you want to keep them on the same sides as you coiled them. And the reason is, if you accidentally pull this side underneath the cable, you will create a whole bunch of knots, literal knots in the cable. And that can be annoying as well. So the only real trick to this is making sure when you secure the cable or tie it up that the ends remain on the sides, and then when you pull it out again, you grab the right end of the cable and make sure you're not pulling it back through the loop. Now, it's also okay to cheat the last part of the cable. So in this particular case, the last loop feels like it should be an under loop or a reverse twist, but it's perfectly acceptable to do the last loop and double it. So you do two twists in the same direction. You're drastically reducing the possibility that you will screw this up when you uncoil this wire. So this may seem like a bit of a hassle to start if you're not used to it, but I promise, as you get used to coiling the cable this way, it's very, very easy to do, and you can do it without even thinking of it. I do it so fast, I'm like a rodeo wrangler. You can get nice, beautiful looking cables every time that will always lay flat. So except for cables that are super short, like maybe under 3 feet, you can wrap every cable this way and always be sure that it's going to lay flat and come out looking beautiful, and always wrap up nice the next time.